What happens when a Hollywood titan storms off a talk show stage in a blaze of fury? You're about to hear the story of Brad Pitt's jaw-dropping exit from Jimmy Kimmel Live, a confrontation that left the audience stunned and set social media on fire. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment with your thoughts on Brad Pitt. Let's get to it. The night kicked off like any other episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live. The Hollywood studio was packed with fans, buzzing with anticipation for celebrity interviews and Kimmel's sharp humor. Brad Pitt, an A-list icon known for his magnetic charm and acclaimed roles, was the headline guest, booked to promote his latest film, a sci-fi thriller generating major buzz. Producers expected Pitt to deliver star power, perhaps share a few insights about the film's ambitious vision. Kimmel, a host adept at mixing jokes with conversation, was ready to play off Pitt's charisma. The stage was set for a high-octane segment, one poised to generate viral moments. But backstage, the mood was already strained. Pitt arrived at the studio earlier that day, flanked by a small entourage. Crew members noted he seemed focused but tense, less talkative than his usual relaxed self. Sources close to the production said Pitt had been juggling a hectic promotional schedule while facing renewed media scrutiny over his environmental advocacy, which had sparked debates online. He was reportedly fed up with questions that twisted his activism into controversy. During the pre-show briefing, Pitt emphasized he wanted to focus on the film and its themes of humanity's future. He asked producers to avoid probing into his personal life or framing his environmental work as political, saying he was there to discuss art and ideas. The team agreed, but some felt uneasy. Kimmel's show often leaned on topical banter, and Pitt's boundaries clashed with the expected vibe. A producer suggested a segment about the film's futuristic tech, which Pitt approved, but the tension lingered. Meanwhile, Kimmel was prepping in his dressing room. He'd been briefed on Pitt's request to keep things focused but wasn't overly worried. Kimmel had hosted Pitt before, landing light jabs that played well. He planned to start with the film, then sprinkle in a few quips about Pitt's high-profile activism. The audience, oblivious to the backstage dynamics, roared as the show went live. Kimmel opened with his monologue, riffing on the day's headlines with his trademark wit. The crowd was electric, primed for the main event. Then came the announcement: Brad Pitt was next. The applause was deafening. Pitt walked out flashing a warm smile, waving to the fans. For a moment it seemed the earlier strain had eased. He sat across from Kimmel, the cameras rolled, and the interview began. Kimmel started safely, asking about the sci-fi thriller's bold narrative. Pitt relaxed, diving into the film's exploration of human survival, his passion evident. The audience was hooked, hanging on his words. Kimmel nodded, tossing in a joke about Pitt saving the planet on screen and off. The crowd laughed and Pitt grinned, seeming to roll with it. But then Kimmel shifted gears. He asked about a recent viral post criticizing Pitt's environmental initiatives, hinting it had stirred backlash. It was meant to be a playful probe, but it touched the advocacy territory Pitt had asked to avoid. His smile faded. He leaned forward, his tone calm but firm, and said he was there to talk about the movie, not online drama. The audience chuckled, thinking it was part of the exchange. Kimmel, sensing pushback, pressed on, setting the stage for a fiery confrontation. The studio atmosphere tightened as Brad Pitt's firm rebuff of Jimmy Kimmel's question about his environmental advocacy hung in the air. Kimmel, quick to pivot, flashed a grin and returned to the sci-fi thriller, asking Pitt about the challenges of filming its futuristic scenes. Pitt answered, detailing the intricate sets and his immersion in the role, but his responses were guarded, lacking the earlier warmth. The audience, still captivated, sensed an undercurrent of tension, but stayed engaged. Kimmel, aiming to keep the segment lively, followed up with a question about the film's vision of humanity's future, hoping to regain the flow. But then he took a chance, veering back into risky territory. He asked Pitt about the parallels between the film's themes and his real-life push for sustainability, suggesting his activism made him a real-world hero. Pitt's demeanor shifted. He cut Kimmel off, his voice steady but sharp, saying he'd asked to focus on the movie, not his personal causes. The audience stirred, some chuckling nervously, others unsure if it was a scripted exchange. Kimmel, picking up on the resistance, tried to pivot again, asking about Pitt's co-stars. But Pitt wasn't letting it go. He leaned forward, addressing Kimmel directly. He said he'd come to share his art, not to have his advocacy twisted into a soundbite. The crowd went quiet, absorbing the weight of his words. Producers in the control booth exchanged worried glances. They'd expected Pitt to play along with Kimmel's style, not challenge it so openly. The segment was starting to derail, barely. 6 minutes in. Kimmel, now navigating a delicate moment, tried to lighten the mood. He said he was just highlighting Pitt's impact, which fans admired, but the actor wasn't buying it. Pitt spoke about the years he'd spent building a career, choosing projects that mattered, only to have interviews fixate on his activism in ways that distorted his intent. His tone was calm but resolute, and the audience responded, some clapping in support, others sitting in stunned silence. Social media was already lighting up, with early clips of the exchange spreading fast. Viewers debated whether Pitt was setting a fair boundary or being overly defensive. Producers radioed Kimmel's earpiece, urging him to steer the conversation back to the film, but the host was struggling to regain control. Then Kimmel made a misstep. Sensing the segment needed a spark, he asked Pitt about a recent online backlash accusing his environmental efforts of being performative. It was framed as a chance for Pitt to clear the air, but it directly violated his request to avoid framing his advocacy as controversial. Pitt's face hardened. He didn't raise his voice but spoke with piercing clarity, saying he'd made his boundaries clear and felt disrespected. He told Kimmel the audience deserved better than recycled online drama. The crowd gasped, some cheering, others murmuring in shock. Phones were out, recording every word. The control booth was in disarray, producers debating whether to cut to commercial. Kimmel, visibly rattled, tried to laugh it off, saying he didn't mean to pry, but Pitt was done with deflections, and the confrontation was about to escalate. The studio was electric, as Brad Pitt's sharp accusation of disrespect left Jimmy Kimmel struggling to respond. The audience, now fully aware of the mounting tension, sat riveted, their phones capturing every moment. Kimmel, trying to salvage the segment, offered a quick apology, saying he hadn't meant to overstep, and asked Pitt to share more about the sci-fi thriller's production challenges. Pitt complied, briefly discussing the complexities of the film's special effects, but his tone was clipped. His earlier passion faded. The crowd listened, but the focus had shifted to the underlying conflict. Kimmel, sensing the segment was slipping, tried to pivot to a safer topic, asking about Pitt's favorite moment on set. But Pitt wasn't ready to let the earlier exchange slide. Midway through his answer, Pitt paused and looked at Kimmel. He said he needed to set things straight. The host froze, caught off guard. Pitt turned to the audience, his voice steady but intense, and said he'd come to the show to talk about his film, not to have his advocacy weaponized for debate. He spoke about the years he'd spent supporting environmental causes, driven by a belief in a better future, only to have his efforts twisted into clickbait. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in applause, some moved by his sincerity, others stunned by the raw moment. Producers in the control booth were in a frenzy, signaling the director to prepare for a commercial break. Social media was exploding, with clips of Pitt's speech going viral, sparking debates about whether he was justified or overly sensitive. Kimmel, now on unsteady ground, tried to respond. He said he admired Pitt's commitment and was just trying to connect his work to real-world issues. But Pitt cut him off, saying respect meant listening to a guest's boundaries, and he felt Kimmel had ignored his. The accusation was direct, and the audience gasped, some cheering, others recording the exchange. Kimmel's usual composure faltered. He suggested they focus on the film, but Pitt was already standing, a move that shocked the room. He said he wasn't there to be a prop for someone else's narrative. The crowd roared, split between support and surprise. Producers shouted into headsets, urging a commercial break, but the cameras kept rolling. Pitt unclipped his microphone, his movements deliberate, and addressed the audience one last time, saying they deserved stories about ideas, not manufactured controversy. Then he walked toward the stage exit. Kimmel, stunned, called after him, saying they could stick to the movie. But Pitt didn't turn back, disappearing backstage as the director finally cut to commercial. The studio was in chaos, the audience buzzing with a mix of excitement and disbelief. Backstage, Pitt's team was ready, escorting him toward the exit. The control booth was a mess, producers debating how to salvage the rest of the show. Kimmel sat alone on set, his confidence shaken as the reality of Pitt's departure sank in. The confrontation was far from over, and its impact was about to ripple outward. The commercial break offered no relief from the charged atmosphere in the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio. The audience, still reeling from Brad Pitt's dramatic walkout, whispered and shared clips on their phones, fueling a social media frenzy. Jimmy Kimmel sat alone on set, the empty chair beside him a glaring symbol of the confrontation. Producers in the control booth scrambled, debating how to proceed. Some urged Kimmel to address the incident directly. Others argued for moving to the next segment to minimize damage. Social media was ablaze, with Pitt's exit trending worldwide, some praising his stand for authenticity, others calling it an overreaction. The show's team knew the moment was pivotal, and every choice now carried significant weight. When the show resumed, Kimmel faced the crowd. He acknowledged the tension, saying live television could get intense, but that's what made it unpredictable. He avoided naming Pitt, instead introducing the next guest, a comedian booked for a lighter segment. The audience clapped, but their focus was elsewhere, many still posting reactions online. Kimmel pushed through, trading banter with the comedian, but the segment felt flat, the earlier energy drained. Producers opted to end the show early, cutting a planned musical performance to wrap up. The decision was pragmatic. The night's momentum was lost, and the priority was now damage control. Backstage, Pitt was already leaving the studio. His team, waiting at the exit, followed as he headed to a waiting car. A few crew members lingered, one offering an apology, but Pitt waved it off, saying he wasn't angry, just done with being misrepresented. He left without further comment. Paparazzi, tipped off by the viral clips, swarmed the studio's exit, snapping photos as his car pulled away. The images hit entertainment sites within minutes, paired with headlines about Pitt's fiery departure. Some outlets lauded his principles, others painted him as overly sensitive. Pitt's team stayed silent, focusing on promoting his sci-fi thriller to redirect attention to his work. Kimmel's team was in crisis mode. Producers reviewed footage, assessing the impact on the show's reputation. Kimmel had built a brand on relatability, but his persistence with questions about Pitt's advocacy was now being criticized as disrespectful. The host met with his staff after the show, visibly shaken. Sources said he felt Pitt had overreacted, but admitted his approach may have misjudged the actor's boundaries. The team debated issuing a public statement, but chose to wait, hoping the buzz would fade. By the next morning, the incident dominated entertainment news. Pundits dissected every moment, some siding with Pitt for demanding respect, others defending Kimmel for sticking to his topical style. The clips continued to spread, amassing millions of views. The fallout extended beyond the studio. Pitt's fans rallied online, praising his commitment to his craft and causes over media sensationalism. His sci-fi thriller saw a surge in ticket sales, with some linking it to the renewed spotlight on his work. Critics, including rival talk show hosts, took jabs, suggesting Pitt couldn't handle scrutiny. The incident became a flashpoint, raising questions about the balance between entertainment and respect in celebrity interviews. Kimmel's show faced scrutiny, with viewers debating whether the format needed to evolve. The night was over, but the consequences were still unfolding, setting the stage for a final reckoning. The fallout from Brad Pitt's dramatic walkout on Jimmy Kimmel Live became a cultural touchstone, dominating headlines and online debates. Kimmel's team moved swiftly to close the chapter, issuing a brief statement days later, emphasizing the show's commitment to entertaining while respecting guests. It avoided mentioning Pitt, a strategic choice to let the story fade. Kimmel addressed the incident in his next monologue, keeping it light. He said he'd learned some stars take their missions more seriously than his questions, drawing laughs from the audience. He wished Pitt well but offered no apology, signaling the show was ready to move on. The crowd's response was supportive, but social media remained polarized, with heated arguments over who was in the right. Pitt stayed out of the spotlight, skipping public appearances and social media. Sources close to him said he was unfazed by the criticism, but frustrated that the media focused on the clash rather than his film. His team leaned into the sci-fi thriller's buzz, securing high-profile screenings and interviews that avoided personal topics. The strategy paid off. The film smashed box office records, with analysts crediting the controversy for boosting its visibility. Pitt's fans rallied online, praising his dedication to his craft and environmental causes over gossip. Clips of his speech about respecting his boundaries continued to circulate, gaining millions of views. Critics, however, were less kind, with some late-night hosts joking that Pitt had overreacted to a harmless question. The divide kept the incident alive in public discourse. The clash had lasting effects on both sides. For Kimmel, it was a rare stumble in a career built on navigating high-profile interviews. Some viewers praised his restraint, others criticized his insistence on controversial topics. The show's ratings held strong, but the episode became a case study for handling sensitive guests. Producers tightened pre-show briefings, ensuring clearer communication about boundaries. For Pitt, the walkout was both a challenge and a triumph. His stand resonated with fans, driving his film to critical and commercial success, with early award nominations. Detractors used the moment to paint him as prickly, but the film's success overshadowed the criticism. His team focused on future projects, choosing platforms that aligned with his vision. The incident sparked wider conversations about talk shows and celebrity culture. Analysts questioned whether hosts needed to shift toward more substantive discussions, especially with guests who set clear boundaries. Others argued stars like Pitt should expect topical questions as part of the format. The clash became a reference point, cited in media panels and articles about the evolving relationship between celebrities and the press. Kimmel's show invited Pitt back, but his team declined, opting for venues that respected his focus on work. The controversy eventually faded from headlines, but its lessons lingered, shaping how both sides approached the media landscape. The story of that night remains a powerful reminder of clashing expectations. Pitt's exit was more than a moment of defiance, it was a stand for control over his narrative. Kimmel, caught off guard, faced the limits of his approach in a changing industry. That's the story. What did you think? Drop a comment below and let me know. Subscribe for more stories like this, and I'll see you in the next one.